Hello and welcome to Offsite Dirt, the place where you can get construction news and all the dirt on so many things from prefab to traditional construction to lean manufacturing to even Edie with B.Public Prefab. Hi, Edie. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks for
It's
having
so
us.
Yes, it's so great for you to be here with us. And I'm so excited about this new show that you have called Takeoffs, Moving the Industry. And today we have a couple of special guests that you have brought to our attention, and we can't wait to learn more about them. So take it away, Edie.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, usually here on Offsite Dirt, it's experts talking about what's happening in the offsite industry. And for takeoffs, I think it's really interesting to talk to stakeholders, clients, and others who are out in the field and experiencing our industry in action. So I've invited some really important partners to be public to have this conversation. And of course, I'm excited always to talk about our company, but I really want to talk about what you guys are seeing out in the field. So welcome Andrew and Tyler from Hammerwell, based in Salida, Colorado. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us, Edie.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to. Will you guys both introduce yourselves and what you're doing at Salida?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Andrew. I run the operations for Hammerwell Salida office, where we have an office right downtown Salida. And we are lucky enough to live in the central mountains of Colorado and build custom homes and partner with great folks like B.Public and be able to take our vision of passive homes and building science out into the world and incorporate it into some really high-end architecture.
Yeah. My name's Tyler Biecky. I'm a project manager here with Andrew, and also very spoiled to live in Salida. And after a handful of years building more traditional stick frame passive houses, I was pretty thrilled to have not only work with Hammerwell here in Chaffee County, but also a project from B.Public, which I had admired from afar for a bit. So day to day, I'm the contractor on site, making sure all questions are answered and measurements look as they should. So.
Well, we are certainly very excited about having both of you here. And I'd love to know a little bit. Obviously, you guys are in the custom home contracting world and general contracting world, which for those in construction is, as I would say, a little bit higher elevated type of product out there. And when we talk about your particular build product, you're doing more of a hybrid construction panelized system. So how does this change the way that you build? And are your customers really allowing and loving this type of building science to come in where they have an elevated panel system that helps with the thermal break and the thermal insulation of their home?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The current project that Tyler and I are working on together, I think it was conceived by some fabulous, really forward-looking clients. They wanted a beautiful piece of architecture on a great piece of land with awesome views, but they wanted to create something that was a legacy. So a home that they could pass down to their kids and their grandkids and on and on. And so very early on, we talked about passive house and building science, and they were on board from the get-go, having an all-electric house, really reducing the carbon footprint of the operating costs of the house over time. And so, and a custom home with passive house principles and seeing the form factor of the house, I knew that we were going to need a good partner. And Edie and I had been talking for a couple of years, and we brought her onto the team to have a look at it. And we had this just wonderful relationship with Moasic Architects, who's the designer. And I think that Moasic had seen some offsite manufactured components in houses in the past. And so immediately when I introduced Edie to Moasic, they were like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. They saw the future of panelization and the fact that, we could achieve certain levels of quality that are perhaps a little bit more expensive or difficult to train for in the field with some of the site subs and that sort of thing. But given the fact that we build a lot of our houses are really big expanse of glass. So we have these huge glass openings. And so every house we've ever built has always had a lot of custom structural elements. So big LVL headers, steel beams, custom trusses, lots of engineering. And so for us to bring panels into a custom home really wasn't it wasn't more of a challenge than any other custom home. It's just a different kind of challenge, because we had to set it up so that all the headers and the structural elements were in place to receive the panels. And the structural engineers were game to play as well. And so I think we spent a lot of time doing planning, a lot of time figuring out, well, what are the elements that are best to build on site? And what are the elements that are best to work with Edie's team to have manufactured and sent to us? And in some cases, we have some B.Public header panels, but in a lot of cases, we wound up site framing quite a bit. It became obvious that the lower level of the house needed to be site framed entirely. So we framed up the lower walls of a basement walkout area and all of the floor box. And then the panels showed up and we started to, and this is where Tyler's going to pop in and explain the process, but it was, a very tightly choreographed dance of, stand some panels, build some site structure, stand some panels, build some site structure, and having all of that converge on site worked out really well. It wasn't more challenging. It was just a new challenge for us, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good way to think about it is larger or bigger parts, but fewer of them overall, right? You don't have a long wall of 2x4 studs sheathing and then furring on the inside for a double stud or anything like that. You have one 8-foot by 10-foot panel. And where that is located is absolutely critical for your ROs and for your structural elements that your engineer is expecting. And so coordinating all that, checking square on a larger house, all those details, really taking the time, not the pressure from the crane operator, but taking the time to take a deep breath and build it the same way you would a standard stick frame wall, but think of these elements as much bigger and them playing on the next element and continuing to build from there. And I have some fun photos of the primary KDL, the kitchen dining living area, with only panels stood, and then us bringing in the structural elements to be able to finesse and move as needed. And it looks pretty funny at first, but then it is pretty amazing how it comes together with those large bearing elements. So, yeah.
Well, and you guys just described that beautifully. When we talk about how panelization is a hybrid, obviously a highly custom, beautifully designed home. Shout out to Moasic, who did a gorgeous design. They always do. And taking on sort of this new challenge of an innovative approach. But I love how you guys have described that, you're not displaced as builders. It really was a coordination of manufacturing and what was going on site, and certainly the engineering, that it was to coordinate sort of a different build. We always hope a faster build. And I'd love to ask Tyler, you were able to attend one of our trainings. So you had a couple days playing with the crane and talking about building science and panelization here before the building. Can you talk about that? You actually came back to the next training and talked to the new crew going through and sort of what your experience was. You seem very open to sharing what you learned, and you just talked about sort of different skills, or like what can you talk about in terms of like that peer sharing and the support to others, even on your team, to do something a little bit differently?
Yeah. I'm remembering the amount of times I spent on a small front porch doing historic renovations, and that conversation becoming all the more critical for every carpenter that rotated through that porch, right? To say, hey, when you were doing that, how'd you do that? What'd you do first? What'd you do second? Oh, what would you do different? Right. So I think first it's asking good questions. It's asking good questions of subcontractors, and it's allowing space for them to ask you questions and being able to back your answers and know why we're building this way. Right. So I think that kind of pinpoints the process of, okay, there's these big blue blocks moving around. Like, why would we do this? and the answer is, for me especially, is environment and the occupants' health, right? Like, this is a better alternative to a lot of ways that we've done things in the past, which is already the first hurdle to get over in construction. But if you're able to kind of grind through that, you're well on your way. And then after that, as builders and makers, like, learning new things is what we love. And so highlighting that again, as a plumber says, hey, I got to drill a hole here. And I'm like, hey, maybe not there, but if you go 3 inches to your left, all you have is 20 inches of cellulose and you'll pop right out the roof. No problem. Right. And taking those opportunities in stride to learn together with other trades and not hold the space as the educator, but actually as the collaborator, to be able to work with them and better understand what's happening in those structures. Why should we not punch a hole in this white stuff on the inside? Why should we fur this thickness for our drains and then allow X, Y, and Z to happen after or before? So really, the opportunity to come back after training, the fun little project that I think is right behind you that goes together relatively quick and easy with a few folks that have been sitting in a room listening to Jonah talk about build science for a while, is much different than what we have on site with my project. And that was really where the rubber meets the road, to take that time. And afterwards, we only get better the more we share our experiences, and being able to pass that along to guys and say, hey, folks, when you're looking at building one of these, here's 3 things you shouldn't do, and here's 3 things you should definitely have on hand. Cool opportunity to be able to chat.
And I think, what's interesting about the hybrid construction and is that the trades folks show up on site and they see something that's very different. It's very clear to them, just driving up the driveway on their approach to the house, that this is not the typical construction, not a typical residential house, even a typical custom high-end house. They walk up and see that these panels are already insulated. They see the membranes, they see the strapping, they know that there's something different going on here. And so immediately the entire team is keyed into asking Tyler, hey, can I put a hole in this thing, and where? They understand that there's something different going on here. And so I would say that that's one of the sort of unintended benefits of having panels on site, is that it's just sending this message to these guys that you can't just cowboy this whole thing together. Like, you really need to do this correctly. And they've all been game to play. They've all been really interested. And I think, Tyler's the perfect person to be running the project because of his deep background in building science and having stick built, things that are at this level, but not panelized. And so he's able to, like he said, have something behind his answer to explain further and deeper when they need that.
Well, and I think it's a really interesting, if we think about this podcast of talking about how we're shifting the industry, materials that are familiar to all the trades, but appearing very differently on site, so that you do maybe honor that air barrier, or you ask questions before you penetrate something that's so clearly a finished product or an assembly. So it's nice to hear that response. I haven't heard that from you guys. It just brings an awareness to everybody who's coming into the project to ask questions, to sort of think about approach, rather than sort of doing the same old that we do on every stick built. That's very cool.
Yeah, and it really helps us out because it's with every trade that shows up on site, even no matter how many times we work with them, we always have to remind them that we want their best work. We don't want them just to finish up and get out. We want them to take their time and show us their best work. And so having just that extra layer of something's different here, you know, I don't know, they just put like a different lens on when they walk on the job site, I think. So and that's true of other panelized houses. We're about to complete another panelized house up in Twin Lakes. There's a manufacturer called Phoenix House out of Grand Junction here in Colorado. They supplied the panels for that house. And, you know, we have a similar experience up there too, with trade folks showing up and really understanding this is different. Also, the building officials. And I don't, you know, Tyler can speak to some of the experiences here in Chaffee County, but the building officials essentially, they show up and say, what would you like us to look at today? What can we sign off for you? As opposed to saying, you know, it's a very collaborative relationship. But, you know, we've got these massive assembly sets from the panel providers, and, you know, we'll point to a specific detail for a connection or something. So we want to show you this before we bury it. And they're more than happy to sign the card, but they're actually also there to be like, how does this work? Because I think they understand that maybe this is something that's coming down the pipe and they're going to see more and more often. And so it's kind of cool that we sit in that seat of sort of educating the building officials a little bit about, you know, kind of how this process works, what the proper documentation is, because I feel like, you know, with working, Edie, with you guys, we have more than enough proper documentation for all of the structural connections and the sequencing and stuff. And so, you know, that's another unintended benefit for us as a company, is that it really elevates our, you know, perceived level of knowledge as builders with the building officials too. So
I think the approach is, you guys run your building differently. It's very nice as I'm sitting here. One, obviously pre-construction is key. You can tell that there's a collaborative effort in your understanding and going out and being educated about these panels, and then talking with your individual customer and saying there could be something that we could do a little bit different, and this is how we can do it. And then you have this collaborative, amazing architect that wants to walk in that. And then you have this manufacturer like B.Public Prefab that is like, well, I can help you here because panels are the way to go, right? And so it's funny, as I actually used to work in custom luxury home building in Denver for a while back. And I don't know if people were as collaborative and as interested. So it's nice to see this mindset and this shift. It's also nice to see that you're willing to not only learn it, but to have those conversations of explanation. And then the thing I think I love the most about what you said, Andrew, was you want your workers to be the best at what they're doing there at that time. Like they're the craftsmen and you're empowering them to do the best work. To me, that is the difference of awareness of building better all along all charts. So I think it really had start with your company and walking into this, and then having Edie's company maybe being that provider that can say, yeah, we can do this and we can do it so much better. Would you agree?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, from the first conversation I had with Edie, I was just blown away at you know, the level of professionalism that B.Public shows up with, the level, the deep planning. I mean, I've been constantly impressed with the business model that B.Public put together, and we're just tickled that we finally got a chance to work together on something that, you know, is really special and unique for some awesome clients that we're just, you know, blessed to have the opportunity to work with. And again, you know, Moasic Architects is doing an amazing job, both pre-construction and ongoing kind of construction administration and planning. And we can't wait to see how this thing is going to turn out, because it's all coming together pretty nicely.
It's well on its way.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate the kind words, Andrew, not necessary, but it's lovely to hear because we are trying to support every project appropriately all the way through. You know, you guys are sitting in a really beautiful place, but with a huge demand for new construction, I think across the board. We're talking a lot about luxury, but there's some other things, you know, in terms of workforce housing and just missing middle there. Are you guys seeing a fair amount of, you've mentioned Phoenix House, which is another panelized company I know, Fading West, which is a modular company that's in Buena Vista right next to you. Are you seeing a fair amount of offsite being implemented to sort of meet this demand near you?
I'd say we're seeing it. It's not the norm yet. But it is becoming more commonplace. And even in our community here, I know multiple folks that live in Fading West homes and are really intrigued. I mean, I had a group of guys stop by a site because they were curious and they were like, oh man, I would love to build this way, right? Like this is more and more common, which is really cool. I think the key is that people understand that what's happening inside of their panels is really important. I think we have a slippery slope back to kind of a standard SIP panel with a lot of foam and a way more intensive use of carbon in our build process. And I think it's important to, again, ask those questions and allow space for those questions to be asked of like, what's the guts of this wall and why? And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that can evolve to meet more standard of living that is much more reasonable for an old trade town in the Mountain West, to be able to have housing behind really, really old brick houses that are uninsulated, that can support a family that's really not that far-fetched financially. So making things more affordable, I think, will really tip the scales toward panelization, as well as people being more familiar with what this looks like. You know, everybody's seen a stick-built house happen time and time again, but to see a house go up in a few weeks or a complicated one in a couple months is really something, and it raises a lot of attention and good conversation amongst our community here particularly. So.
Yeah, and Edie, I mean, you raised some really important questions. We face the same challenges that a lot of mountain towns of Colorado are facing. The great migration to Colorado and the Mountain West in general was sort of, got a turbo boost from COVID with remote work and people, kind of fleeing the suburbs and the big cities. And we've seen the impact on the price of real estate here locally in Salida, which was, I think, there's kind of a local joke, which is keep Salida ghetto. Salida was a very sort of depressed town for a really long time. And it's only been the last 10 to 15 years, really the last 6 years, that it's blown up, and it's blowing up quickly. We have workforce housing problems. We've got a labor shortage. We've got record inflation. And so, not only do we have a higher demand for housing, but the construction costs to build them are going up. And so attainable housing is a real challenge for us as a community, as a county, and in a lot of ways as a state. And so what I think we would love to see is we'd love to see panelized houses become more of the norm and have them be more at parity with, code built houses. And one of the ways I see that happening is Chaffee County recently adopted the 2021 IECC. They needed to do a code update. And in the state of Colorado, any municipality that is going to do a code update is mandated to adopt the 2021 IECC. So that's great. We're increasing the energy code. Obviously passive homes and really high building science houses are beyond that code, but I think that, that sort of stick approach of bringing these regulations down will ideally help to bring the cost of the average house at parity with a passive home, and perhaps lower the cost of some of the higher insulative values, and bringing some of the materials in, perhaps, I don't know, but ideally having these better energy codes in place will help level the playing field for passive homes in the future here in Chaffee County, and maybe get them to a level where passive panelized homes become attainable for the average person. And that would be kind of like, that's what we dream about.
Yeah.
When we think of what the perfect future for our community looks like, it would be really comfortable, well-built homes that average people could live in.
Well, and I think you guys know that we're in that fight with you in Colorado and the US, that we really believe everything should be comfortable, low energy, and sort of as efficient as possible. So I know we've been talking about this luxury, beautiful home, but I think employing your skills and your experience and bringing them to projects that are maybe more simple and smaller, but get the same care, is really encouraging. And I do have to say, you guys are cutting edge green builders. You're really taking it sort of to the next stage, and everyone we've met from your team really is in line with that. I think you guys are showing incredible leadership and still really showing the craft. We want to support builders doing things and doing things the way they love to do, which is showing that pride. And you guys are just a really amazing example of that. I feel like this has been such an exceptional conversation, and I know we could talk for a long, long time. But I'd love parting thoughts, or Audrey, you want last question?
Yeah, so I just have to say that people that are thinking about, when we look at the general construction flow or the system, I feel like the approach for using offsite, using a panel system, is always the least resistant. And I have to agree with Andrew and Tyler about everybody should have this type of home. And we're starting to see that with standards increasing, why can't everybody have that? Because if we have a panel system that can take a couple of days or a couple of weeks to dry in that home and lock the door so that we can finish it, there's a big difference. And then obviously I always love the volumetric part of that, because I'm always looking for more efficiencies. When we used to do our houses in Colorado, the house would be set in a couple of hours and you could lock the door and the building's dried in, right? So we're not dealing with any environmental issues. And I think the other thing is about, again, it's all about pre-construction and putting your team together the best way that you possibly can and having those conversations. I love that Edie does training. I think builder training is a huge success story in itself, because if you can train and learn on site instead of being and doing the project that's already contracted on site, there's a big difference to being able to have that conversation. And so when we start looking at these evolving practices, because that's really what's happening, we're evolving as builders into this modern method of construction, and it's only elevating our way to live in these homes and live healthier. Why not? Why shouldn't we do this? So I do feel like we're making those steps. And I think with Tyler's company and Andrew's company, this is the way that we do it. So I would love to know, how do you see the next 10 years for your company? Where are you going? What's your direction? And what's your big next opportunity out there for, utilizing maybe an offsite solution?
Well, it's a great question. And I think it is very salient to sort of the topic here. And really, I think the reason you brought us in was to talk about hybrid construction, because the project that we're building has a lot of hybrid elements. And one thing we've learned is that there are, at least in our world of custom luxury homes, there are certain homes that are really, really good fits for panels. There are certain homes that are pretty good fits for panels. And there are other homes that aren't good fits for panels. And we're kind of learning that because we want everything we do to be successful, we want all of our partners, including potential panel providers, to be successful. And so kind of learning early on what is a good fit for a panel technology and what is not has been really important for us. And I think, though, that generally our take is let's apply panels every possible place we can, because we do see the efficiency of having them show up, having them assembled on site, having them pre-insulated. And so, having a house that basically the trades can walk into and they're warm in the wintertime before the insulation guys show up is awesome, right? And knowing that it's really well constructed, it's tight from the outside, it's got the vapor control on the inside.
Yeah, you worry a lot less about
Yeah,
it through the winter.
yeah, exactly. But the next 10 years, I think, is we really want to continue to have a proving ground for passive home construction in the luxury market. And even if they're not certified projects, just using the building science to the utmost degree and assembling the teams that make that happen. If it's a panel provider, then that's amazing. But certainly it has to be mechanical engineers and, modelers who are willing to work with architects and engineers who are willing to take a second look at thermal bridging. We're really sort of pushing the ball down the field on all fronts on some of these projects, and assembling a team of different trade folks and designers and engineers that can help us along the way. And we're just tickled to work with people like Edie on those kinds of projects.
You're very kind, and it's a nice vision of the right tool for the right project. And I think that's a really good place to sort of round it, that we have opportunities in the industry to choose from a lot of new materials, new manufacturers, new approaches right now that really are new. I mean, we're really talking about passive and materials to achieve passive. When I built my house, which is a certified passive house, nothing was available in the US. So it really has changed. So being able to address the specific project and what is the right solution, what's the right approach, and of course, working to push things that will be most efficient and speed production of the home, but also keep those costs in check. So you guys keep up the amazing work. Thank you for coming on and talking about your work. I know some people are going right back out onto the project, and we can't wait to see it complete. But I know you're seeing the end of winter and hopefully spring, summer to see this get totally complete and share pictures. So thank you, Audrey. Thanks for hosting us. Thank you, Andrew and Tyler. Hammerwell is really doing beautiful work, and appreciate your kind words about prefab. And talk to you guys real soon, I hope.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
See you soon.
Thank you all, and thank you for being here. And that's all the dirt on Offsite Dirt. Have a great day.